This edition of Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. We're also broadcasting from our website, which is www.radio1fm90.com. On that website, we have an icon with the word Listen Live. You click on that icon, you'll be able to listen to us from anywhere across this globe. There's also the option of listening to us via the different radio listening apps. Now, those can be obtained from the Google stores of your smartphone. You download any, including TuneIn, Afromobile, your TV channel, Radio Garden, and Stream Afrique. Now, Radio 1 is also live on DSTV, and our audio channel there is 897. There are two ways to contribute to these discussions. One of the ways is to call in. Time allowing, I'll open the phone lines for you to do so. But also, there's an option of actually sending us a WhatsApp message via 0703 090 090. Today, we'll be looking at accountability questions for political parties. Now, a report by the Auditor General has raised a number of issues about how political parties are utilizing taxpayers' money received through the Electoral Commission. Now, this report indicates that in total, 7 political parties receive annually around 44.9 billion shillings, which is shared out based on the numerical strength formula, that is the number of MPs each political party has in the House. And now, based on that report, the NRM party, which has a majority in the House, receives 75.7% of the funds, which is about 34.1 billion shillings. Now, the main opposition party, NUP, gets 12.7%, which is about 5.7 billion shillings, while the People's Progressive Party, founded by former Minister Jaber Bidandisali, which has the least representation in the House, receives 0.22%, which is about 100 million shillings. Now, the funds are always given out for these political parties to help them operate smoothly, but the Auditor General seems to suggest that the funds are not being used properly. Now, the NUP party has responded to some of these findings, and today I'll be speaking to one of the officials about this particular matter. But we also know that the party is being accused of other things, including failure to adhere to the rules and regulations to the extent that its activities have now been halted by the police. Now, what does this mean for this political party ahead of the 2026 general elections? My guest this evening is Mr. David Louis Rubongoya, the Secretary General of the National Unity Platform Party. Good evening, sir, and thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Good evening to you, and a good evening to all the listeners.
All right. Let's begin from the accountability angle, because this report has caused discussions to go on, and I'm sure you're familiar with some of the key findings there that relate to different political parties, but even your political party, where you are said to have failed to present balances of what actually one would say unspent amount to show the Electoral Commission the unspent amount of money that you have on your budget. Let's begin from there. What exactly is going on? Why is it becoming so hard for political parties, generally speaking, to provide accountability to the Electoral Commission?
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, I'm very glad that you're reading from the right Auditor General's report, because at some point there was a fake report making rounds, which we came out and flagged as false, which was generated from NASA Road and all that. But if you read the Auditor General's report, you realize that the National Unity Platform accounted for all the funds, first of all, and the only issue the Auditor General raised about NUP was that there was no statement of unexpended balances, which we provided actually, because once a query is raised, you immediately put it out there. So it was just maybe an oversight on the part of the accountant, but it was a very small thing really, and when they requested for it, we gave it to them. If you look at the report, it points out many failures on the side of other political parties, but not on the side of NUP. If you read the report, it talks about parties which have no work plan, no budget, nothing basically. But NUP has tried to account, even amid these very difficult situations, because I want the listeners to understand that the context of a political party, especially on the opposition, is very different from, an NGO or, a company or something like that, because of the situation under which we operate. For example, people who deal with the party many times don't even want to be known because of the challenges that they face. I can give many examples, but when we bought the first piece of land at Kavule and we unveiled it. You know, there were heads rolling everywhere. Security was involved. How could you get land here? Where was ISO? What was intelligence doing? They started harassing the people who have neighboring pieces of land, telling them to sell. There's an old man who had to even run out of town because the pressure was too much. You know, according to him, Nabanja and these other people were insisting that they wanted to take that piece of land. They wanted to buy that piece of land. So ordinarily, it would be okay for us to, for example, say the party is looking for land, but you understand the challenges any person who deals with NUP would go through. Even suppliers of the party. I mean, if, for example, ordinarily, if I was to make an accountability as a party, as NUP, we should have the name of the person signing for the money, their telephone number, signature, and that kind of thing. But in our context, you know, for someone to put their phone number there on documents that are going to the Electoral Commission, and tomorrow they are tracking them down and that kind of thing. So these are the challenges we get. But nonetheless, like I said, we accounted for all the funds, and we continue to account for all the funds. Our listeners should also see, you know, I always see people focus on NUP. I'm very glad that you've talked about it. NRM takes 75% of the money. NUP takes just a paltry 12%. But see what we've been able to do in less than, you know, we are now making 3 years. I mean, we're now making 4 years. But in less than 4 years, because we unveiled the party in 2020, we started getting facilitation by funds allocated by Parliament after the election. So less than 3 years. But see what we've been able to do as a party. To you know, have offices and presence across the country to support families under welfare of people who are in prison and that kind of thing, and many other things that we continue to do, and of course have the best headquarters of any political party in this country, and we continue to expand and to have to make inroads in other regions and that kind of thing.
All right, you sort of touched on my next question. You know, when you receive this money from the Electoral Commission, it's clearly stipulated what you're going to use it for. And one would want to know, what has NUP been able to use that money for? You've been receiving since the last elections. Let's say you received in 2022, you received in 2023, and I don't know if you've already received it for this year. What have you done with this money?
This money is meant to facilitate the day-to-day running of political parties. And by that, you see every day, you see us moving every day, you know, going to different regions for activities, meeting our people. We've established mobilization committees all across the country. For example, NUP has 10 departments, and each of those departments is always doing work. You know, we have the Finance and Administration Department, which will deal with offices all across. Lastly, for people to get proper context of this money, because, you know, when anytime a billion is mentioned, someone thinks of a lot of money. The other day I was just doing a simple calculation that we have 146 districts in Uganda. If we wanted to give just over 6,000 T-shirts to every district of Uganda, you would need to have 1 million T-shirts. Now get 1 million T-shirts and multiply that by 10,000 shillings, a piece, just one T-shirt. You'll find that you need about 10 billion shillings for T-shirts only.
All right.
If you're to supply the whole country, and a district just giving it about 6,000 T-shirts, 6,000 something T-shirts, which is not even a big number. Right. So I wanted the context to come out very well.
Right. Now, on social media, there's a lot going on. There are documents that are flying around. For instance, when you talk about the purchase of land, there is where we have seen a receipt that suggests that you paid for the land for the offices at Kavule at 1.5 billion shillings. But then another receipt actually shows that you submitted that you paid 750 million shillings. And some people have been saying you are not transparent. They're saying, no, where is the rest of the balance?
No, first of all, that's not true. Even the figures you're quoting are wrong. But like I said, those are cooked documents. The documents that we submit to the Electoral Commission are available. Like I said, we account for every penny that we get. There are NUP, as you know, being where it is, has so many detractors, and so many people want to portray it in negative light and that kind of thing. So what I can say, you remember the propagandists first came out and claimed that we bought land at 5 billion and that kind of thing. We came out and said, no, actually the money you're talking about, we did not even spend half of it. to buy land. Of course, later on we expanded and got more pieces around the same area as you've seen. But we've been able, like I said, to account for every single penny, and our documents speak for themselves. If you are interested, you can get them. I would want you to focus on the Auditor General's report and see, because these auditors, when they have any queries, they write to these political parties. That is why after doing an audit, they just came up with that query about unexpended balances, which we're able to explain. Yeah. So I was just giving you a simple calculation. If you wanted to give if you wanted in every district of Uganda to have very, very few T-shirts there, you need about 10 billion shillings to have this number of T-shirts in those places, and you can do just simple calculation and see. So that's a challenge. What people need to understand is that political parties in Uganda go through many challenges. They are underfunded. Of course, like I said, the NRM takes a lion's share, 75% of this money, and in addition to that, uses taxpayers' money. So if we have a by-election, for example, NUP will just be relying on its own funding to do this work. But you'll find that NRM is relying on all these ministers will camp there. They will not use fuel from the NRM secretariat. They will use government funds to go and camp there, engage in bribery of voters. At that time you see tractors by different ministries go there. That's a form of bribery. Every time there's a by-election, you see them start fixing roads and that kind of thing. So that's the challenge, like I said, that you get with these kinds of situations in political parties.
All right. There's also been information that you also receive a lot of money from abroad, which your party membership does not know about. That has also come out. Some people have been saying that you need to tell the public how much money you receive and from which sources. Because some people believe that if you're receiving money from wrong sources, it could easily influence the direction you take. For instance, if you came into power, and therefore the members of the public ought to know who are your funders. How would you respond to that?
Well, first and foremost, we do not get a lot of funding from the diaspora. Again, that is a narrative peddled by the Museveni regime. You've seen even these protesters, anti-corruption protesters. He came up and said they are funded by foreigners. He somehow thinks that him and his people could get guns in 1980s and go and fight the regimes of the day for corruption, but he doesn't believe that the young people of Uganda now can actually go on the streets and protest against his corruption, which is worse than the one which the previous regimes were dealing with. So that is a narrative they peddle around, that, you get a lot of money from the diaspora. Every time, after elections, you saw we stopped fundraising, public fundraising, even from the diaspora. One, because we were receiving money allocated by Parliament, which was able to help us meet the day-to-day expenses. But also we realized that we do not need to burden these people in the diaspora all the time. Maybe if we have a big operation like an election coming up, we might decide to fundraise again. But we've not been fundraising. Every time, except in cases where we have like a special operation we want to do, the way we are fundraising for Karamoja, and we reached out to the population and people came through to support and that kind of thing. All right.
And then would you be willing to actually be open to tell people the sources of your funding, the people who actually provide you this money? Earlier you said that some people fear to identify with opposition political parties, but if you want to be different from those that you want to replace, as some people will say, you ought to be transparent, open enough to show the public who you are.
But that's what I'm saying, that first of all, there are many challenges. In the law, for example, the Political Parties and Organizations Act, it says that you should disclose the sources of funding, including the names of people who are donating money to you. But can you do that in Uganda?
Well,
even if you were receiving donations?
Well, you can. Why not?
I mean,
That's
can't.
What the law says.
Like I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
That NUP can be the first to actually do that.
But the point I'm making is that, first of all, if a person who is selling land to NUP can be under so much fear because of the state, if a person, I'll give examples. Recently, people were printing NUP T-shirts here in downtown Kampala. The security forces raided them and took those T-shirts. I personally wrote a letter to the IGP demanding that they return those T-shirts. Up to now, they have never returned them. And Fred Enanga, went on TV, at the time he was a spokesperson, and confirmed and said that these people were trying to incite violence. So you can imagine what that means to the business of this person who was printing these T-shirts. We put out the videos on social media and all that. And many others. During elections, a young man on Nassau Road was picked up because he was making posters and flyers for NUP. He spent 4 months under illegal detention, incommunicado detention. You know, a young man called Kajimu. So, if they can harass people who are just dealing, who are trying to help the party, what you would call service providers for the party, how about a person who would, for example, give support to the party? So that's what I'm saying. But that is not to say that we receive money from the diaspora and all that, like I said, and it's on record. Every time we want to do fundraising, we put out the call and say, please come up and support us. Now, for a very long time, we've not been doing fundraising. Like I said, we might decide to fundraise again when the time for elections come.
All right. NUP has projected itself as a political party that is tough on fighting corruption. And earlier on, you hinted on the peaceful demonstrators.
Yeah.
And some people have actually been saying that, look, NUP is also not very safe. There are some allegations that are being directed at one of your leaders, the leader of opposition in parliament. Apparently, while he was chairperson of COSASE, it is reported that he received 1.5 billion shillings. Some people have been saying you have not taken a tough stance against him like you did with his predecessor, the Honorable Matthias Impuga. Is this not double standards? Like I was saying, I'm not here to peddle or even support or even, in any way try to propagate propaganda and these schemes by the regime. I'm sure you saw the man who has been peddling those falsehoods put his defense in court. I'm sure you saw what he said, that some man called Dean Boasava. When he was tasked to, explain himself before courts of law, he's now saying that he was not speaking factually. He was just giving opinions. Because if you allege, in law we say whoever alleges must prove. If you allege that someone received 1.7 billion, when we had the issue of the Honorable Matthias Impuga, our former LOP, there was evidence, there were minutes of him, them sitting in a meeting allocating 1.7 billion shillings for service award and all that. And it was the basis, because, before that incident, there had been many allegations flying around. And we kept telling people, provide evidence. When eventually the evidence came out, there was action. So that's what I'm saying, that every time, whenever there is no evidence, like our president said, no evidence, no right to speak. So if anyone says that Honorable Senyonyi received any money, provide the evidence and the party will take action. But as far as we are concerned, there is no evidence and it is not true. And why do I say it's not true? They first said 1 billion. Then they said 1.5 billion. Then they said 1.7 billion. Then they started bringing out different houses and buildings which belong to other individuals, saying, now this one belongs to Senyonyi. Until the owners of these buildings came out to rubbish these claims and that kind of thing. All that, like I said, is because, like we've been saying, when you fight corruption, corruption fights back. So one of the things that the regimes like the one we're dealing with and other people do, every time you point out that you are corrupt, they say, but you also are corrupt. Even without evidence, even without providing anything, they want to say that we all are in the same boat. So there are no double standards. Our standards are very clear. If anyone has evidence against Honorable Senyonyi, bring it. All right. There's a proposal, before we actually leave these issues of funding, there's a proposal to bring a law that would regulate the amount of money a political party or an individual can use in elections. You as a political party, what would be your position on this? Absolutely. We would even welcome it with both hands. But the problem is that it would not be implemented. We've been saying that the problem in Uganda are not the laws, but the implementation of those laws. But those who are supposed to implement are actually the ones proposing. The proposal that's what I'm saying. Cabinet retreat. You, for example, saw a report by the Alliance for Finance Monitoring. It indicated that NRM spent over 900 billion shillings in the last election. And they said that NUP spent about 3 billion. Now you imagine, you compare. One party spends over 900 billion, another spends 3 billion. And you're all competing.
in an election. And like I said, the NRM, the money NRM is spending is not NRM money. It is taxpayers' money, which they are using to do their own campaigns. You remember before the late Professor Mutebile passed on, may his soul rest in peace, one time he spoke about the issue of having funded campaigns thinking that he was actually, the money which was meant for choppers ended up financing elections on the side of the NRM. So that is a challenge. All
right. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. My guest this evening is Mr. David Louis Rubongoya, Secretary General of the National Unity Platform Party. We are looking at accountability questions for political parties. The Auditor General's report, the latest one that came out, indicates that political parties are not doing well in terms of accountability. And there's an issue that has been mentioned about the NUP party, which is not presenting the balances that are on their accounts. This party receives 5.7 billion shillings annually from the taxpayers. But the Secretary General here is saying that they have already provided the clarification to the Auditor General responding to that particular issue. We are going to go for a break. When we return, we will switch our gears and look at the activities of this political party. Why are they not out there as they promised to actually canvass for support? And what are they planning to do differently compared to what they did in the 2021 general election? Now, stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90, but keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. And the guest in studio will be responding to you.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. We are looking at accountability questions that are rising for political parties from the Auditor General's report that suggests that political parties are not being accountable enough. My guest this evening is Mr. David Louis Rubongoya, is the Secretary General of the National Unity Platform Party, who is here to explain those particular issues. We spent the first half of this discussion responding to those issues, including allegations of corruption that have been directed towards one of the leaders, the Honorable Joel Senyonyi, but NUP insists that he is innocent, challenging anyone who has the information to step forward and provide that evidence for them to actually take action. Now, let's shift your gears on your operations, Mr. Rubongoya. And you've been accused by the security agencies, in particular the police, for not listening or following the rules and regulations that you have agreed upon wherever you're called to meet in order to provide them adequate time and information to actually police your activities. Yet you want to continue to move around the country and not following the laws.
Well, you've seen really, as any Ugandan, you understand the double standards of the police, and you can see how clearly it is partisan and how it is doing everything to frustrate NUP. Because if you read, for example, their latest letter, they were very clear about, for example, saying that you're holding processions. You've seen all political parties do processions in this country, beginning with NRM, beginning with that illegal entity called PLU. FDC was in Arua the other day, and there was a huge procession. Even the media reported that, traffic came to a standstill and that kind of thing. So the point I'm making is that when it comes to NUP, they have to write and say, we have stopped you because of processions, because of this. They have always looked for excuses. The last year after Luero, you remember, after seeing the massive numbers of people who were coming out for our events, they came up and said, first of all, they wrote to me saying that ADF was planning to attack our president. They said, therefore, we advise you to stop these activities. 2 days later, they wrote saying that your president is using inflammatory language on these activities. Then later on, they said you're doing processions, that now, because of the ADF scare, you should be in closed-door meetings and you should tell us a number of people who are coming and that kind of thing. We challenged all that on the basis of the double standards they were doing with other political parties and other entities. So it is clear, and the other day they were saying there was an accident. So every time they have to come up with an excuse, and that's what I'm trying to say. I believe the people of Uganda understand that these are double standards.
You are a lawyer, and you understand the law very clearly. Once the law is applied on you, you don't start talking about The others.
What is the law?
You focus on the
But
issue.
I'm saying that we do not break the law. All our activities are done in accordance with the law.
So why are processions so important to you? Let me give you an example. When your party leader went to eastern Uganda, there was a procession on Jinja Road, which is the only route that helps us to get supplies from Mombasa to Kampala. And there was blockage. Vehicles were blocked. And the Constitution, even the law, says that while you are enjoying your rights, you should not infringe on the rights of others. Doesn't that play out for you as a
No, we've been very clear.
There's a problem there.
The role of the police is to regulate, not to just ban and do illegal bans of activities.
Well, in regulating, they can tell you that, look,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm coming to. That's what I'm coming to. You see, every day in this country, you see processions happening. The role of the traffic, of the police, in this case, the traffic department, is to come and regulate. Say, use this side of the road, do not use the other. And you've seen, like I said, the problem is that these are the double standards which we condemn in the strongest terms possible. Because if we say we are going to have a meeting in Mbale or in Jinja or wherever, we want to coordinate with the police. We want them to say, use this part of the road so that you do not inconvenience other road users. And I can tell you that it will be very, very successful. We are going to abide and ensure that, we are complying with the law and other requirements.
Well, you have been having meetings to discuss what should be done and what shouldn't be done. Is that not enough for you to actually be working closely with the police? At one point, we were told you actually have a liaison person who should from time to time connect you together so that these issues are resolved even before they happen, so that you can smoothly continue your activities. What has broken down? What has failed to happen?
The problem is that the police and the military establishment in this country works for Mr. Museveni and the NRM. So they are just scared of the numbers that.
But they invite you for meetings.
That's why I'm trying to come, because these meetings inconvenience us. For example, after our events, they said the next meeting will be on the 8th of August. And you know what that means? You have lost all that time. We were supposed to be in Soroti, we were supposed to be in Palisa, we were supposed to be in Bugweri. How shall we recover that time? The other day we were supposed to be in Kamuli and Palisa and other places. We did not go because, again, they invited us for a meeting. So every time they say, you remember the other time we were supposed to be in Mitiana. So if they invite you for a meeting, it automatically means that you're losing time. And that's a problem I'm talking about. You lose time, and we don't have a lot of time. And so we think that the police is really trying to aid the state by trying to derail us. You go to the western part of the country, do some activities, and then when you write to them, notifying them of other activities, they say, no, you cannot do them, wait for 3 weeks until we have a meeting, and then after that, they can do that. While this is happening, like I told you, just see all around, NRM politicians are doing events. There are several. Today there's an offshoot of this and the other. They are moving around everywhere doing their activities.
With the police.
That's what I'm saying. But if you see what they are doing, you see when they say, for example, that don't do a procession, or when they say, because the other first time they said all your meetings should be in an enclosed gathering, and we challenged them. We showed them how NRM and other people are doing their things in open grounds. I will also tell you something about the double standards of the police and the military. And that issue is regarding the venues. Everywhere we've gone, they make sure that we cannot access the towns, while other actors access the towns.
Which is good for you.
No, it cannot be good for us. I've seen people say...
Let me tell you why I think it's good for you. NUP and the opposition are fairly known in towns. So if they are sending you to the villages, they're sending you to a new lease of life where you have not had an opportunity to explain.
But you see, a town brings together people from all villages. You understand? It is different from going to one village. So when I go to Sembarara city, I'm meeting people who gather in the town from the different villages of Mbarara district and even Western Uganda. But if you block me and send me to a particular village, it means I'm going to address people only from that village and a few others that may come, that may be able to travel there.
So how will you be able to garner support
But the point I'm making,
across this country if you want to limit your operations on?
But we already have the support. I've told you that even in the villages we are not allowed to do activities. So when the president goes and he says I want to address a rally at Boma grounds in Bundibujo, then after that our mobilizers will continue going to the villages and other places. The only challenge is that even those mobilizers are arrested most of the times. You remember a few months ago we had our mobilizers from Renzori arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit a felony, and they were slapped with treason charges and all that because they just found them in a meeting. These were mobilizers of NUP seated planning about mobilization activities. So that is what I'm trying to tell you, that we have a very big challenge, and that challenge is lack of a fair playing field, for all of us to be able to enjoy equal rights as Ugandans. All right.
You had an opportunity to run for office in 2021 as a young political party, as young people, a fresh breed of leaders on the political landscape. And someone would say from the process you had in 2021, you have taken lessons. So how are you doing things differently? Have you taken any lessons? Are you doing anything different from what happened in 2021? Of course, we know that election was shrouded by the COVID-19 pandemic, but how differently are you operating as a political party? Some people think you are not a political party, you are a movement, but you pretend to be a political party. So some people don't understand who you are, what even you stand for.
And we are not out there to say that everyone should understand us, and that's why we use the rubber of style. Because if we do everything in the way everyone has been used to, we don't expect any different results. We aspire to lead this country. We aspire to introduce good governance in this country. We aspire to be better, to have a better functioning country, to respond to the challenges of the 21st century. We want to be able to respond to the demands of the Gen Zs about accountable leadership, having a leadership that responds to the needs of the people. Those are the things we want to do in this country. So in terms of what are we going to do different? First of all, I was here the last time and I told you that we've done everything. In the last election, we did everything humanly possible in terms of standing for a free and fair election. These places where we've been for the nationwide tour, including Western Uganda and all these places, we've been seeing people come to us to say, our president got 144 votes at this polling station, and these guys changed that to 0-4. With impunity, on gunpoint, they say, you sign here, they forced this person, and some of them had to run away, others were injured in the process, and that kind of thing. In places like Isinjiro, the people, and good enough, they were speaking to the media, the military took over polling stations and said, you know what, you guys are not going to vote for the president, just vote for MPs. For the president, you've already voted. And that is how you saw in the last results, we had over 400 polling stations where Museveni apparently, quote unquote, got 100% of the vote. So these are the challenges that are there.
So what are you doing differently?
For us, what we've been doing is the most important thing, and I'll tell you that NUP, like I said, just made 4 years the other day, and the biggest achievement for me, I'm proud of as an individual Secretary General of this party, is that we continue to awaken the young people of Uganda. The young people of Uganda to be able to know that power belongs to them. This will not take Rubongoya, it will not take Honorable Chagula, it will not take Joel Senyonyi or any other person. It will take every single citizen of this country to come out and say enough is enough, we want our vote to count. That is what is going to change. And that has been our message, our constant message. Because we all know what happens in this country. There have been people who have been saying, of course, boycott the election. And, there are all sorts of arguments for and against. And, of course, we've discussed all these options because of the way it has been, of the way elections have been in this country. In many places where dictators are, you boycott an election, they bring their...
mentioning dictator and election in the same sentence.
That's what I'm saying.
Very strange.
You see, for us, and I think this has been the argument even of our predecessors who have been there, who have given us inspiration, that elections can be used to mobilize the population, to charge the population. In the last election, we were able to move to places where we would never have been able to reach. We tried to do consultations, we were not able to do them. We tried to do what? They blocked every opportunity. When the election came, they found themselves in a situation where, even when it was so violent, it was what, but at least we were able to move. and put out a message. So our view is that, even I'm using this opportunity to speak to the people of Uganda. This is our country. All of us have an equal stake in this country. And it's not about NUP. It should not be about anybody. Every individual in this country, the most important right that they can have is a right to vote. And for their vote to be counted and for their vote to count. Why am I saying that? That vote, if your vote counts, it means that it will have an influence on your healthcare, on your education, on whether there is corruption in the country or not, on everything, basically, and that's what we normally say, on how you are born and how you die. That is how powerful the right to vote is. So we charge and we call upon the people of Uganda to defend their right to vote, to defend their right to have their vote count.
All right. Let me bring you into current affairs. Let me give you an example. At the moment, there's a strike by traders in Kampala. They have closed their shops, and there are issues to do with taxation and the trade regime. But generally, it's an issue about the economy, because whether you are in opposition or in government, we all need an economy that works for us. In your view as NUP, is there a problem with this economy, and how would you fix it?
Of course, we've been talking about this question of unfair taxation every single day. The biggest problem of Ugandans, actually, I don't think is that the taxes are so high. The bigger problem is why those taxes do. You know, if you are introducing new taxes every day and introducing other oppressive tools like EFRIS, which the traders have been complaining about. But when they look at the budget, for example, and they see the priorities, the roads, you just see what Kampala is like. Today it has rained, and you can imagine the jam that is in this city today. And so the people of Uganda keep saying, why are we paying these taxes? Why are we being charged in this manner? When the schools are terrible, when you cannot even find basic drugs or equipment in government hospitals, when you cannot... So government should be working for the people. And so for us as NUP, for example, you remember in our manifesto, we talked about removing what we call negatory expenditure, trying to ensure that we set the priorities right. We start making sure that we put the money where Ugandans are. We do not believe in giving out handouts. We want to give a hand up to the people of Uganda. We want the taxes to, for example, these are all these young people. They need. We are in an era of tech. You saw the other day the team which UCC assembled to discuss AI and that kind of thing. We want to revolutionize things. We want to be able to have huge investment in tech, in technology. That is, we want to make sure that agriculture, there's a huge investment in agriculture, and that there's improvement in terms of value addition and that kind of thing. Not just paying lip service to these things, but doing them in real sense. And
the question I'll put to you, if you have all those good things, how come you never talk about them? Some people have been saying you're too much obsessed with removing the dictator, and some people have been saying you failed to do that. How come, even in your meetings where you go, public rallies, you never tell people what you stand for?
Then I think whoever says that has not been paying attention, because we talk about our policy alternatives everywhere we go. Even on this trip where we've been, our president has been taking time to explain to the people the challenges they have in the different areas. If he's in Bundibujo, he talks about, the challenges within that particular area. For example, I talk about cocoa in Bundibujo, because that's a main cash crop there, and where the local people, the farmers themselves are not benefiting. The other day we went to Ishaka, and we were talking about the issues that affect the people of Ishaka, the prices of banana and what we can do. People are complaining why there are no factories in that particular area to do value addition. When we're in Tungam, we're talking about milk and other things. So I think people have not been paying attention, but also maybe you can talk about the question of the biggest obstacle in our path to achieving all those grand ideals is, first of all, removing the dictator. So that's why, after talking about these policy alternatives, we also talk about removing the dictatorship, because that is the wall that is blocking the people of Uganda from actually experiencing what we normally call a new Uganda, to get better services, to get proper healthcare, education, and these kinds of things.
All right, Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. It's time to reflect on the comments that are coming in from the listeners, and I'll begin with this comment, which is from Dickens, who is listening in from Dubai. He says, good evening, moderator. Why would NUP leaders be soliciting for money to buy a motorcycle for a mere boy when NUP accounts are filled with millions? There is no transparency in their finances, accountability. We thank the opposition for making NRM more stronger than before because they have done nothing than being hypocrites. That's a comment from Dickens in Dubai.
Well, Dickens sounds so much like an NRM bot. I don't even know if that's a particular individual, because, again, that's a narrative. When, for example, this young man was running after our president in Isinjiro, you know, many people came out when they saw the video. They said, we want to reach out to this young man. How can we do that? How can we reach out to this young man? So we never asked people to raise money for a boda boda. The president actually bought that boda boda for that young man. Our president bought that boda boda for that young man. But many people on social media were saying, we want to reach out, we want to help this person. And so it was only fair and prudent that he shares. But that's, again, a minor issue. Like I said, that is a narrative that the NRM has been preaching every single day. They try, and that's a challenge. You see, like I've said, look at the Auditor General's report and see what it talks about the NRM, and see what it talks about NUP.
All right. And
then compare to what such an individual says.
Well, this listener, Bob, has not spared me. He says, Kenneth, as a Ugandan journalist, it's unfair of you to insist on naming the funding of the opposition political party. You should know better. Well, I'm trying to ask questions on behalf of people who are not here in studio, so I believe there are those people who wanted to know whether NUP can name their funders. Then we have another comment which comes in from Alan, who says, I'm very sure NUP has been funded by State House. Well, that's a comment from Alan there. You'll respond to him. We have a comment coming in from Kasozi Mulindwa, who says, for the high moral standard the NUP party leadership has supposedly been setting, for even a whiff hint of corruption, we would expect the suspected leader to step aside and allow for full accountability. Would the Honorable Senor step aside and allow for investigations to be carried out? That's a comment from Mulindwa there. Then we have another comment coming in from Amo Martin, who is listening in from Bale. Says, my question to the NUP Secretary General are as follows. 1, is it time for the hunter to be hunted? 2, how many NUP workers at NUP headquarters pay as you earn to URA every month? 3, in whose name is the NUP headquarter land registered? 4, did NUP pay stamp duty when transferring the headquarter land to the current legal owners? Well, that's Amo Martin there with that comment. We have another comment. Let me see if this comment, Clovis, the comment from Clovis is not about this discussion, but we have a comment coming in from Godwin Okiror in Intinda. NUP has been put on the spotlight, and they have more often than not blamed President Museveni for nepotism. We have seen Chairman Nanzi all over the place and signing on accountability forms submitted to the Electoral Commission. Rubongoya, isn't this double standard that you claim to condemn? Who is Chairman Nyanzi really? He who comes to the temple of justice must come with clean hands. Well, he references that word you lawyers like using a lot. Then we have another comment from Grace Commander, who writes and says, good evening, Kenneth. Let me just thank Rubongoya. It's their first time, but they have done better than any other political parties. That's Grace Commander there with that comment. Then we have a comment from Anthony Olim, who is listening in from Wankoko. He says it was the president passing, but they opened later. I think this is a comment for the previous discussion. Then we have a comment from Masaba, who says, from Tororo, who says, Mr. Lukwago, greetings to my beloved SCG Louis Rubongoya. Bravo for the work you're doing. Police of Uganda, they are not for Uganda, it's for NRM police. Very partisan, and they are involving the army also. That's a comment from Joe there. Then we have another comment. Good evening, Anderson, and your panelist, Mr. Rubongoya. 2 comments towards your guest. 1, if NUP gets funding from the diaspora internally, it's not disclosed and hence not accounted for. Don't you think it's a fertile and breeding ground for more corruption due to lack of transparency by the party? How different would they be from the ruling party? Then another comment, the issue of NUP battles with the police to me is an issue of miscommunication between them and the police, and they must know they can never enjoy equal treatment with the party in government. It's obvious. That's a comment there from this listener who is Kamogo Fred Keta, listening in from Kira. Very quickly, let's respond to some of these issues.
Well, thank you very much.
We see if we can get more comments.
I'm really delighted to hear the feedback from our people. One, we've been very clear that, again, and that's a pain of dealing with a dictatorship because of, they invest a lot of your taxpayers' money in propaganda. And then you hear someone ask a question like, in whose name is the headquarters registered?
Well, it's an important question.
That's what I'm saying. We've been very clear. We've even put out the...
Maybe he doesn't know. So
I'm giving this information. We've been I'm saying that because at some point, the regime was very deliberately trying to create a narrative that the party headquarters, for example, are in the names of our president. And we came up and said, no. Now the conversation has shifted from, is it registered in the names of the party, to how much did you pay upon registering it? So that's what I'm saying. They are always trying to find a narrative to peddle. They're always trying to find a narrative to promote. But what I can say is that all titles of the National Unity Platform are registered in the name of the National Unity Platform. I challenge you to get any other political party with the number of titles that NUP has in its name. You will not find it in Uganda. All this done over the past 2-3 years because we believe in serving the people. That headquarters that we have, all that land that you see and other properties we have, belong to the NUP. So if tomorrow I'm no longer the Secretary General, this property will not come to me, it will not go to President Kyagulanyi. It will be for the party, and we hope the leaders who will come after us will be able to take care of this because it's taken a lot of sacrifice and thought to do these things.
All right, we have a question from Lindwa here. Can Honorable Senyonyi step aside for investigation?
And I want to come to that because, people who step aside when there is any sense of evidence against them, when they are what you'd call credible allegations. So is Mulindwa trying to tell me that...
Can there be credible allegations?
Absolutely. I mean, in law we call it a prima facie case. That if someone is accusing you of something, is there anything to hold on to?
Credible evidence, maybe.
Yes. I mean, allegations that have a semblance of credibility. You don't wake up and say that so-and-so received a bribe. Like I told you, for example, those people have been saying you received 1 billion. The following day they say 1.5. The following day they say 1.7. So why should he step aside on the basis of no evidence whatsoever?
All right.
And of course I heard someone talk about the role of Chairman Nyazi. Chairman Nyazi is the head of mobilization of NUP.
Couldn't it be somebody else?
No, I mean...
And not Nyanzi, who is related to your party leader?
So could it...
That's a question from
So couldn't it be Chairman Nyazi? Because, I mean, Chairman Nyazi has been involved. You saw he was involved in the Chadondo East campaign as the mobilization head of that campaign. He has been in politics even longer, even before People Power started and all that. So he's... And this money, when you see, for example, money go to a certain department, it does not necessarily mean that it is this individual who is taking it. No, it's because if it is a mobilization function, the head of mobilization, people have to make requisition through the head of mobilization and that kind of thing. All right. That is how accountability goes.
All right. We have a comment from Benon Fred Twinamasiko. In the last election, 2021, most voters are said to have just been voting the umbrella and did not know the name of the MP they voted for. How different are you going to be to avoid a situation of people like Honorable Kagabo in 2026?
Yeah, I wanted to also respond to someone who again brought the issue of the diaspora. He made it clear that we are not funded by the diaspora. Largely, we are funded by the money allocated by Parliament to political parties and contribution to some of our leaders, only members of Parliament at the time, right now. The question of the next election, and we are doing different things. And I want to say that today we had a NEC meeting, for example, as a party, and one of the things we discussed was that we are trying to come up with modes and methods of ensuring that we, first of all, get our leaders early enough, we vet them properly, and we subject them to some form of training so that we minimize the issues of the Kagabos and others of this world.
All right. I'll give you an opportunity to give us your closing remarks as we end this discussion.
Thank you very much. It's been a good time being here. I want to appreciate our people for listening in. I want to appreciate our people for supporting the National Unity Platform and for understanding the context in which we operate. We continue to call upon our people to support the protests which are going on by the young people of Uganda.
Really?
To demand better, to demand for accountability. Yes, because dictators many times listen to protests. If people are saying no to corruption, no to all these things, we need to support these protests and see that we have a better country for our children and our grandchildren.
Well, with that, we come to the end of Spectral. Let me thank you, my dear guest, and you listeners who have actually listened in and contributed to this discussion. Tomorrow, Friday, 2 hours of analysis of the top events of the week. I've been your host, Kenneth Lukwago Anderson. Up next, we have the news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with BB Jr.